Welcome back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have an impressive guest who's making waves in the digital landscape, Aline, who is Vice President of Digital Strategy at ITI Digital. Aline has been leading digital initiatives and enhancing customer experiences in the tourism sector since she joined the company. Aline, welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Can you share a bit more about ITI and the exciting work that you all are doing there?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tisha. This is super exciting. I'm glad to be here and very happy to have this conversation. ITI Digital has been in the travel industry for 30 years now. Our mission is to deliver simplified website content. So that would be, events, business directory, trip planning tools, and we work with travel brands, chambers of commerce, hospitality brands, and so on. We say that we've been creating better online experiences for the last 30 years.
Let's jump right in. And I really want to start. So if you think about your extensive experience in digital strategy and operations, can you tell me a little bit about what you believe is the most critical element for brands in the tourism sector to succeed when they're trying to enhance customer engagement today?
So, what I believe is to be open to technology solutions. We're not the only technology provider in the sector, but having a mindset as destination leaders to seek those solutions and to work with different providers for different objectives that you may want to incorporate on your website or your marketing elements, it's what makes the difference. I think that we have obviously seen a big shift into that in the past 4 years, but it's still an ongoing thinking that has to be changed day after day. Technology is fast paced and those developments are happening on the daily. So that has to continue to be an open conversation with destination leaders, parks, hospitality brands, and so forth, because it does impact how we users, travelers, consume the content.
How do you think your industry is doing so far in actually aligning digital strategies with customer needs?
I think we're getting there. There's brands that do it very well and they listen to the customer. They listen to what's working and what's not working. We also have to navigate political shifts that also affects this industry. It is somewhat a discretionary product. So I think as long as you're listening to your audience, you can make adjustments. And we live in this great time that technology is there to support our decisions.
So what's so fascinating about this is that your decisions that you're making right now actually directly impact your customer experience, but you do have this big what if when it comes to sort of the economic shifts and the economic changes. How do you actually pull together the right set of information to make decisions about what the things your organization will do when you have these big external factor considerations to think about?
Say, do I have an exact formula? No, but I think that indecisiveness is worse than making a decision that can maybe be revisited or that we can adjust the course. So I would say from our side, developing software, developing product, we'll look at direct customer feedback and we will keep in mind the landscape that we're working towards. Like I worked through the pandemic, adjusting our product to continue to bring relevancy. It was a time of uncertainty. And now we're going through another time of uncertainty from an economic standpoint or foreign relations. And that shapes how these brands position themselves to the travel consumer. And we take that into consideration in the decisions. So if I could summarize, to the customer, I would say number one, but number two, staying on top of trends, but also being that personality that will push people in the right, kind of path and push them forward, to think differently.
So, what happens when you don't have all the information that you need and you need to make a high stakes decision? Do you have frameworks or are there any other guiding principles and factors for you?
I would say not an exact framework. I would kind of rely on what is that we are trying to achieve. I've always been a person that goes back to the why. If it's a small decision or a big decision, what is the why? Even in the sense of if I get a request, like bringing to the practical world, I get a feature request. This customer is telling me, ABC, I want this in the product. You guys don't have that. My initial question is the why. How will this be applicable in the long term? Does it apply to other scenarios, other markets that we're working with? And I think I go back to that.
Yeah, because it's almost like what ROI is the customer going to receive for putting in said feature and holding them accountable? And then for
Yeah.
you, and then also can you reuse that? Will this help our business move forward too if it's not a custom, particularly if it's in a piece of software that you're building that's generalized? Okay, well, so now you go back to the why, which means that you're going, hey, here are the outcomes, the things that I want to achieve, which is why I'm making this decision to do a thing. How do you actually track those outcomes? How do you know whether or not your digital initiatives are successful or not? Are there any particular metrics that you find that measure success really well?
Great question. I want to start by saying that I think we always need to be humble enough to adjust as we learn and revisit these decisions, especially when we talk scaling and growth, and not everything is a right straight path in this journey, but to measure it, it's how we can make adjustments. I think the key metrics for us, we're in the digital side, so obviously we'll look at all of those engagement metrics and client feedback and so forth. Product adoption is something we look constantly, but I think it starts with knowing why are we doing this, what is the outcome we want. So having those clear initial objectives, even if 30% of the way will be defining it along with the customer, I think having those objectives make it simpler to track the metric or track the results that we want to see.
Are there any hidden metrics, like things you're like, man, I just can't seem to measure this?
Yes. So there's one that I think in this industry, everyone that works in it will agree. It is incredibly difficult to track the entire journey of the traveler. So we are
Mm.
working in one piece of the puzzle, which is enticing, creating desire online, where that travel experience starts. It is still to this day a challenge, I think, for every, ad tech and us on the content side, just to see, did Aline go there? Did they hop on a plane and got to the destination after being inspired? But it's something that has been improving in the past couple of years. So I think that's a metric that ultimately everyone wants to get a final definite answer.
I imagine you guys will have to break down that metric into intermediates, right? You'll need to say, here are all the intermediate steps along the way. If the trip is at the end, then there's a whole bunch of stuff up to that point. You'll probably have to measure that entire thing in order to get an accurate picture. Because I'm thinking right now about how many different people in different places and different circumstances but are travelers. So you have so many variables.
And you go from intent to actual bookings and all of that. It's a big journey path for from a digital perspective. But the positive side of this is that technology is there every day. This has been further and further developed through all the aspects of the industry. So I think partnerships are important in that sense. So you get a full picture of your project and your outcomes.
So let's talk about internal partnerships. What's hard about helping your team to remain agile and helping them to remain responsive, especially because we know that the landscape that you're in, not just tourism, because we just talked about it, the changing people, but technology in general is just changing so quickly. How do you keep your team agile? But I want to know mostly what's hard about it.
Hard about it. I think what has been the most challenging is ensuring cross functional collaboration. I have a product team that is very technical. And then I have perhaps a marketing and sales team that doesn't want the tech jargon. They want to work in a different way. So I think ensuring that cross training and cross functional collaboration is so important, but it is challenging at times to incentivize that communication. And then I would add about our industry. My background is in the travel and tourism industry, but it is such a niche group and bubble of people that if you're not from the travel industry and you land in this crazy, set of people here, it really is something, a steep learning curve and understanding how we work, how destinations operate, and what's important to them. I think that's usually also a challenge, internally, bring people up to speed.
I could absolutely understand that. So, for our listeners, I want you to think about if you're in a niche bubble type of space, what are some of the decisions that you're making that impact your steep learning curve? And really, I also want you to think about how you can incentivize communication. I really like the way that you said that because it's not just people are not going to communicate just because, but I like the idea that they can be incentivized to do that. Hey, if you can, share your thoughts with us on LinkedIn or other social media. Use Dynamic Decisions podcast. And let's talk about leadership. How do you actually get your team to think about innovation and continuous improvement?
That's a tough question, Tisha. I since I started, I've really tried to put systems in place with this, with the company and with the team we've had across the years. And when I say systems, it really is from communication tools to project management tools. And I still am surprised. I sometimes talk to colleagues or peers that even larger teams, they don't have very well defined platforms where people can collaborate and keep the work transparent. I think that's the key. So to answer your question, I think it's literally that. It's open the space for communication. We use Slack. It's kind of everyone is there. There are several channels. There's little groups of communication, and we also use different management tools, Asana, Jira, Atlassian products that keep transparent. We're fully remote and we work right now across 4 time zones. So at any given time of the day or night, I can wake up and someone is online doing something. So that if we don't have these tools and these platforms, I think it would become very siloed and very challenging to understand what everyone is contributing.
Makes sense and not foreign, right? I think we hear from leaders across industries that this is a big thing. I think what's interesting though is your concept of a transparent organization. I think that that's going to be the future org. Is people are going to have to agree to being transparent in order to get the levels of collaboration that they're looking for. Let's get to my final segment. It's my favorite one, by the way. So I get to ask you, I'm going to ask 4 questions, but I'm going to ask the questions from the lens of a persona. And these are decision-making personas. And we're going to figure out what percentage of 0 to 100% you are of each one of them. But of the 4 questions, you only get 100% total. Okay. So
Okay.
I'll ask all 4 questions, and meantime, you'll just kind of note your percentage on each one. And then afterwards, I'll tell you what the personas are. Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds fun.
Okay. Here we go. Hey, so we're considering a new digital strategy. How are we going to ensure that it aligns with ITI's core values and enhances the customer experience? That's your first question. So you got a 0 to 100% on that. Remember, you only get 100% total.
I would say, oh man, I would say that's like a good 50%.
And so that's called a feeler. So you're 50% feeler right now. Hold on to that number. You may decide to change it after you hear some of the other ones. Let's see. Here's your next one. Hey, so we're reflecting on last year's digital initiatives. What specific trends or insights have we uncovered that can significantly influence our next strategies?
We're going to do 20.
Fence. Okay, here we go. That one is called a planner. That's the planner persona. So you're planning constantly. What are we going to do? Here's your next one. We're evaluating our previous digital strategies. What key lessons have we learned that have fundamentally changed our decision-making process.
Okay, I'm trying to do the math here, Tisha, but I'll do 15.
Okay. All right. Here's your very last one. So we're formulating a new digital strategy. What specific data points are we going to rely on to validate our decisions?
That's the other 15.
That's your other 15. So that's the data driver. So you are 50% feeler, which is highly gut and intuitive and people driven. So you said a few things that would lead me to that path, like collaboration and transparency are, I'd say, highly aligned to feeler persona. Then your second, your 20% planner. So after you feel it, you're going to plan it. So let's write it down. And then 15% counter, right? So we're going to look back, we're going to count what happened. And then the last one is data driver. So your 15% data driver. So the intent is over time and in different circumstances, your decision making varies. That persona, but balance is the key. The key is a balanced decision making sort of format. And so good. Use that. Tell your team to talk to you about the things that they're trying to do because you're 50% feeler as opposed to bringing you a whole bunch of data points. Data points are good, but you're like, that's only 15% of the story for you.
That's right. Well, okay, this was enlightening.
Good. Finally. So, based on that, would you do me one favor as we wrap this conversation up? If you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring leader in digital strategy, what would it be?
The one piece I would give is don't overbuild. Start solving the problems you have now. Create a system maybe that is replicable and understood by your peers and your team. And if things feel right, just to pick on my persona there, those repeatable models can always be expanded. That's my 2 cents, Tisha.
That's insightful advice. Thank you so much for offering it. Aline, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Your expertise in driving digital transformation in the tourism sector is inspiring. Can we share with our listeners where they can learn more about you and ITI Digital?
Absolutely. Yes. Fantastic.
Yes, let us know right now.
Okay, great. So yes, you can learn more about ITI Digital on our website. It's iti-digital.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and post a lot on the industry. We would love to share what we do and continue to learn together.
Fantastic. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate it, and share it with your network. Let's keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.